Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, welcome. I am so delighted to introduce my guest today, Ruth-Anne Eisler. Ruth-Anne is a business writer, editor, and corporate communications specialist, working with a wide range of clients, including speech-language pathology, creative arts, animal welfare, political candidates, nonprofits, and governmental organizations. As a former professional musician and legal researcher, Ruth-Anne leverages her unique background by converging artistry with logic, producing bespoke solutions for clients who require clear, assured, and human-centered communications. Welcome, Ruth-Anne.
Thank you, Tammy. So nice to be here.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you for joining me from your home office just outside of Vancouver.
That's right. Yes, and it's a good thing you can't actually see my home office, or your listeners can't, because it's a bit of a mess, but onward. You can't see that.
I can't see that either. It looks good to me. So, whereas you can see my home office and it is a mess, but it just means that I have a busy mind. That's the way I think about it. So, as you know, this podcast is all about professional transitions, life transitions, the kinds of transitions that people make to make their lives happier, more fulfilled, filled with more meaning. And I know that you've made several transitions in your life, and I'd love to hear more about some of the transitions that you've made. I know we've talked previously, and I know that at some point you worked with a coach, and that was also helpful to you, always putting in a plug for coaching. Yay, coaches. But would love to hear about your earlier career in the music industry and also what you're doing now.
Right. So yes, I started out as a classical musician, and that was when I was young. It seems like a totally different time now, different mindset, but I enjoyed it at the time. It was also a very difficult time because as a classical musician, unless you reach the upper echelon, the pinnacle, I don't know that you're able to make a successful career out of it, or at least one that pays very well. So it was fine for a time, and then times changed, and I needed to transition to something a little more stable and steady. And that was when I returned to school and then returned to work as a legal researcher and writer. And so I was looking for stability and steadiness, and that's what I found.
So I'm curious, just going back for a moment to your work as a professional classical musician, you said, that was a difficult time. Was it difficult purely because of the finances, or were there other parts of your life as a musician that felt difficult? Because I think of musicians as people who have to be passionate about what they're doing, because it does require so much discipline and practice to become really great at it and to get any work because it's pretty competitive, I think. So when you look back on that time, was the definition of success or being happy, was it to make ends meet? Was it other parts of being a musician that were starting to get difficult? I'm curious.
Right. So I think the difficulty for me arose because it required hours and hours and hours of being alone. As you mentioned, the discipline, considerable discipline, sitting alone at my keyboard for a lot of musicians practice most of the day. And when I say most of the day, that could be 8 hours. Mm-hmm. So that was difficult. And I didn't want to be alone. at my piano most of the time. So that was a difficult part, aside from the financial.
So that's helpful to hear, because I think, when we think about the starving artist or I interviewed another musician a few episodes ago, and, she talked more about the struggles financially. And I think that's the first thing we often think about when we think about people who, let's say, decide to put their music career on hold for something else. So it's just helpful to hear what are some of the other dimensions that might cause someone to want to go back to school or make some sort of a change. So what propelled you into going into legal research? How did you decide to go in that direction from music?
Yeah, so that's kind of I guess, a funny transition. It was like going from one extreme to the other. I'd always actually been interested in the law. I found it quite fascinating when I'd read about cases in the newspaper or what have you. And so I thought, yeah, that might be very interesting. And then I would get to indulge my love of research and writing a little bit more. So, the opposite of music, stability, research, writing, that was it.
So you followed something else you were interested in that led you to the next thing. And I recall when we talked earlier that you had said that you always liked to write. That was something that you hadn't really, I think you said you hadn't really paid attention to as much, but that you really did discover a real love of writing.
Yes, there were clues, and I just sort of pushed them aside. I mean, I think it's normal for people to have many interests, although a few of my friends, they got out of high school, they knew exactly what they wanted to do. They went to university to become a pharmacist, and they're pharmacists, and that's what they're doing for the rest of their lives. But yeah, I do think it's normal to have, several interests. And so one interest was pushed aside and others developed. And yet the clues were there all along and the interest remained. It just grew stronger over time until I couldn't ignore it anymore.
Yeah. And you listened. I mean, you listened to whatever, whether they were the voices in your head or other clues that showed up in your life, and you actually paid attention and listened to them and followed up on them.
Right. And that took a little bit of prodding as well. As we chatted a little bit about this. So yeah, it wasn't just me. I had some help along the way, a little bit of prodding.
Yeah. And yet even that, I would say, some people don't naturally step into even having that person in their life who prods them or helps them think through some of the details. So kudos to you for being open to getting some help and thinking some things through.
Well, thank you. And I think so much of it depends on where you are in your life. And perhaps if I had been a musician and I had received that prod, I would have disregarded it. So as you say, being open to hearing things at certain times of your life. So I was obviously open at that time.
Right. So when you were a musician, you were younger and at clearly a different point in your life. And then when you went back to school and got your paralegal certificate, you were at a different stage, would you say? Or did that kind of create the stage?
It was both. So I was definitely at a different stage, but it also was a platform that led me to the realization that, okay, there's more here. There's more. I can segue off from this into something that's even more to my liking. So it was a little bit of both, most definitely.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that we talked about was your son, and you wanted your work life to also fit in with being able to care for him and having a professional life that fit in with a family life too.
Right. So once again, it had to do with, a life stage. And I wanted to be able to be home. And I didn't go through, everything I did to have him, only to leave him with strangers. So, I wanted it to fit into my life. I wanted to be able to work at home. And that was really important to me, to be there for my son. And so when he reached the stage where I thought, okay, now he's a little bit older. Now, what am I going to do that's going to facilitate my desire to be at home and look after him, and also to, help me feel fulfilled?
So what did you do, and how did you make it happen? I mean, it sounds like you made the decision to move away from some of the legal research or paralegal work and move more into your own business out of the house. Is that right?
Right. I just thought, well, look, there's going to be a plan here, and I've got to have a series of action steps that I take because I thought I wouldn't get much work if I didn't have at least some sort of ticket behind my name. So once again, I went back to school. I went to the University of California, Berkeley to get a certificate. And then I joined an International Association of Business Communicators. And yeah, that was part of my plan of action. I received some coaching, and which I found just invaluable. And it was a coach who gave me the sort of final prod I needed to help me on my path. So there was definitely a series of action steps, and then I just followed through on them, and it worked.
So are you saying that with the coach, you decided to go back to school and join the association, or had you already done those things and then hired the coach?
Yeah. So I had already gone back to school because I thought, wow, this is an area of interest that's unfulfilled and I want to carry on. But I still needed some help, and I needed some, as I said, a little bit of pushing and somebody to help me sort of clarify and sort through things.
Yeah.
Because I'm just an analyzer and I find it hard to make decisions without knowing every single piece of the puzzle. Yeah.
Uh-huh. That's really helpful to hear about. I'm sure we have some listeners who are people who, like yourself, are analyzers. They like to look at all the facets before they actually make a decision. And the fact is, the facets or the different pieces of the puzzle could go on forever, and you could just go on figuring out the pieces without ever making a decision, right? And so with the help of a coach, they can help you reach that point where it's like, okay, Ruth-Anne, it's time to make a decision here, or at least try something, right?
Yes, you described me perfectly. All the facets, the different possibilities, the paths, the avenues, and it's impossible to know. And I recognize that intellectually. It's one thing to know it. It's another thing to say, well, okay, I accept it and I'm going to move on.
Yeah.
So that is where, the coach was extremely helpful.
And, I love this because I think some of the keys to making a successful or a satisfying transition, your example is an excellent one, because what you've demonstrated here is you know yourself, you know some of your own patterns, and you know that you want to reach a certain goal or a certain endpoint, and that you know what kinds of resources or help you're going to need in order to get there. So a combination of self-knowledge and then some external resources to help you get there. So for example, you weren't afraid to go back to school a couple of times. I've heard people say, oh, it's too late, or I don't want to spend the money. And it sounds like you made very good strategic use of going back to school, because I know you studied music for your undergrad. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
you already had your bachelor's degree, but you went back twice and went to these certificate programs and got the credentials you needed, joined an association, put yourself, positioned yourself, but then also got the support around helping you to navigate the waters to really move things forward, especially around some of the areas where you knowing yourself might get a little stunted or a little held up, with your analysis paralysis, let's say. I also wanted for our listeners to know, so the program you did at UC Berkeley, what kind of certificate did you get?
That's a certificate in professional writing.
Oh, okay.
And then I'm working on an editing certificate as well. So
you're doing that now?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, wow. So you're just a lifelong learner, aren't you?
I am. I don't think there's ever been a time when I haven't taken, since graduating from high school, when I haven't taken some university level course somewhere. So I'm one of those people who acquires some little courses and certificates here, there, and everywhere. For me, that's never been an issue. I imagine I'll be 85 and still taking some course somewhere.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So you just enjoy learning, but clearly you've been taking some of these courses clearly to expand your professional skills and expand your business. So what does your business look like today?
So today I work in the corporate communications field mostly, and I'm doing annual reports. I'm doing reports. I'm issuing press releases. I recently got involved in working for a politician in the last local election, which I just loved.
Ooh.
The public relations, it was fascinating. All that you see that goes on TV, the behind the scenes, the political infighting, the chaos in the in the war room. It's all true. It's all there. So, but mostly, a lot of writing public relations material, corporate records and reports, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I know that when we talked, I loved how you characterized sort of the flavor of what you do, that you really try to keep your writing very human-centered, especially if you're writing about something maybe that has a technical side to it, that you try to keep the jargon sort of at a minimum so that what you're writing about is very accessible to, let's say, the layperson or the average reader, so that whoever is absorbing whatever you've written, that they'll gain from it.
Right. And I think that's so important, because all writing, in the words of William Zinsser, he was a great journalist and writer. He said, all writing is there's a transaction between you and the reader. And I think it's true even in corporate communications. And at the end of the day, or underneath everything, it's all about human to human interaction. And I think if you every communicator keeps the audience in mind, but I think if you really focus on the end user and remember, humans want human interaction and they want stories, you can reflect that even in your corporate communications, I believe. So that's what I try and focus on.
Yeah. I'm curious. So in the early days as a musician, you were spending many hours alone practicing and getting ready for performances. And now you're a professional writer. And I know you have clients and people you interact with, but it would seem to me, and please clear me up on this one, it would seem to me that you're still in a profession where there are significant periods of time where you're working alone. Is that still the case, or do you feel that you have a better sort of blend with your work now in terms of the people connection and how that works for you?
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about that too. So yes, I am alone for significant periods, and I really love that. But I'm also very high touch. So I really like to collaborate with the people I'm working with. And I find I have just the perfect balance. So I get to collaborate and we chat and we discuss, interesting aspects of the communications. And then we go away and I go back and I write. So for me, it's a lovely balance.
Oh, good.
And it works.
Great. I was curious, when we talked earlier, you had said something about your dad, that he was a great role model for you. And there was something about the example he set for you, or something, a message that he had sent or given you as you were growing up about work, about choosing work.
Right. So it was more about I had a lovely example in him of someone who would make a plan. He was a civil engineer, and he was a very skilled planner and organizer. And so I would see him with just projects around our house, and I'm talking massive projects that maybe other dads weren't undertaking, like renovating the entire house or what have you. And I would see him make his plan and put it into action and take a step every day. And at the end of the year or the 2 years or what have you, suddenly we'd have a new kitchen and dining room and bathroom, or whatever he was working on. So it was a really, really, really effective model for me to see, like, you can do pretty much anything make your plan, have a plan of actions and steps and tasks. And if you do them, that will predict the outcome.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So now I remember that. I thought that was a really neat example. It's always nice when we have a parent who set an example for us that we actually want to follow, because sometimes we don't, right? But I remember asking you, what would be your best piece of advice for somebody who is maybe just starting out, or maybe even somebody who's in the middle of their career, but looking to make some sort of a change or transition. And I think that was one of the examples that you gave, is to come up with a plan. The changes that you made them over time. They've evolved over time. I mean, I think you said, I would have never dreamed, when I was a musician, that I was going to become, a corporate communications person or a writer. And, we all surprise ourselves. But are there other pieces of advice from your own experience of making changes and transitions that you think would be helpful for our listeners?
Well, and we've already hinted at this and talked a little bit around it, but I do think that if every person, young person especially, but of any age, has the opportunity somehow to find an objective advisor, mentor, coach, career counselor. And as I said in our earlier conversation, I think it's so important to pick your advisors carefully. But I think if we all had that opportunity, I think it would be just amazing. So that would be my one piece of advice. I would find an excellent coach and really get some objective insight and really do some serious work with the coach and see where that lands you, because I think it's just invaluable.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, I thank you for my own reasons, but also, but I do agree. And what I say to people all the time is that when you look at anybody, let's say someone in the public eye or someone who personally, who, let's say, fits your definition of success, which could be anything. If you think about it and you look at them, you realize nobody is really successful in a vacuum. Nobody got there working completely at it alone. Even those people who, let's say, bootstrapped it in some way, they started with nothing and they built up. But along the way, they had some help. And it was not just that they got good help, they had to be open to that help and they had to work with the help. So it's, like, I love what you said about choosing carefully who you work with, because you have to really feel an alignment with that person that you choose to work with. And when you have that, it can really bring about some great results. And clearly, you've had some great results. So you're in the middle of this editing class now. So are you thinking about incorporating more editing services into your work? Is that something that you're thinking about, or is it just something that you're adding to your kind of skill set?
I'm adding to my skill set, and I also think I would like to edit some books. I'm doing one right now, but again, I'm a firm believer in having some certification behind you. So I just think it's to have the credential is very valuable. So that's what I'm doing, and I think doing some book editing would be great. So that's where that's leading.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, Ruth-Anne, anything else on the horizon for you these days? Anything else you're excited to share with us about where you've landed most recently?
You know what? Recently, I've been doing some work in the animal welfare field, which is it's very, very dear to my heart. So I'm really quite thrilled to be doing some work for this particular organization. And yeah, if I can carry on doing more work in animal welfare, then I will feel like I've succeeded and I'm doing what I really enjoy doing. So yeah, it's very exciting.
Feel free to tell us the name of the organization. We can include a link to their website or something in our show notes. What is the organization you've been working with?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's a Canadian organization. It's the National Farm Animal Care Council.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yeah, it's a collaborative organization, and they're, as the name indicates, they're involved in animal care and welfare. So, yeah, I'm quite thrilled to be working with them.
Great. And how can people find out more about you and your work or get in touch with you?
Just go to my website. I think the link will be along with your podcast.
Yes,
It's
well,
it's raywrites.ca,
okay.
and my information is there, or they can look me up on LinkedIn. And yeah, happy to chat.
Great. Well, Ruth Ann, thank you so much for being on the show today. This was really interesting, hearing about your journey and how you've gotten to know yourself over the years and
Mhm.
learned how what works well for you. And it's always fun to talk to somebody who loves what they're doing. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Tammy. Just a pleasure to chat with you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Ruth-Anne Eisler. It was interesting to learn about her professional pathways and how she navigated her way to a place that was both satisfying and secure. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? Is there something you'll put into action this week that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. Look for episode 032. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. Are you thinking about what's next for you? Ready to consider your options or begin a process of exploration to get the clarity, energy, and plans you need to move forward? I am piloting a small group for 4 to 6 professional women who are curious, willing, and ready to engage in a 3-month program that offers the information, inspiration, and support you need to get going where you are going next. Cohorts are beginning in mid-September 2019. By the completion of the group, you will be refreshed and ready to take on new endeavors. Are you interested? Do you have any questions? Feel free to contact me through my website or through email, and we will schedule a conversation to explore the possibilities. If you enjoyed this episode with Ruth Ann, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I would love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find our page at tammygoulerloeb.com/Apple. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows? Maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.